Welcome, everybody. Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, as any type of researcher, any type of person, or the planet itself would completely change if we were seeking truth. Now, truth isn't some sort of philosophical, nebulous concept. There's only one truth, and this can be argued, and we won't get into the philosophical realities of what truth and not is, because you can't really get anywhere with the human race is a bunch of mental psychotics anyway. Give them their drugs, their porno, and let them live in buckets of money while other people starve to death. And praise the Lord. So, this is the kind of bizarre society we live in, but ultimately, what is life all about? And as I talk about, it's about manifesting. But how do we manifest anything? And we're not talking about, again, here something that may be judged or measured, meaning the fact of how successful you are or what, etc. We're talking about generally the manifesting of anything that really does something. And we need to change the way we do everything to be centered on that. Now, what does that mean? Well, you want to invent a car. Okay, well, the car has been invented. It was invented by the French, who invented what we know as the automobile today. And, of course, goes back to wagons and all sorts of other things, if you want to call those some sort of cars. The British called their motorways carriageways. Oh, yes. Bring us down a cup of tea and we'll take the horses out with the carriage. So, but the bottom line is, does it work or not? This is a car. Yeah, it don't work. This is a car. It doesn't move. This is a car. It's sitting there. This is a car. This is what society tells you. They just feed you a bunch of crap. It doesn't work. It's worthless stuff, yet you get people to support it. And what's sad about it is you get these so-called alternative people who are more than happy to jump away from the failed regular science into really what is nothing more than a bucket of dung. They jump from one idiot into even a worse idiot who thinks he's going to cure your problems, and if it is able to do that even cheaply, well, that's wonderful. A lot of times it isn't cheap, sometimes it is, but this comes down to the idiocy that continues to perpetrate itself in this world, and it seems to be dying down a wee bit since the satanic founder of the modern Orgone movement has died, and so is his wife and most of his friends and everything else. Oh, we cry a big tear. You use toxic stuff, you're not going to live long. So the whole idea is that all these things come together, but we also have to be careful that that toxic crap is still being sold by his good buddy and friend, as he states on his website, John McDonald, who's putting out the same kind of junk before. And as I consider this stuff, and with my research and feedback, this seems to be very toxic stuff, and it certainly has been alleged to me by many people of getting terrible results. And of course, we know the inventor of it couldn't keep his wife alive. He couldn't keep himself alive. But this was stuff that was going to build you up because Orgone, as he messed with it, was so life empowering. Well, Orgone in itself is very fascinating. Now, Wilhem Reich was a fascinating guy. He was pretty much possessed by sexuality. A lot of people in modern times don't understand that Wilhelm Reich was a student of Freud, and he spent most of his time trying to liberate people from their sexual oppressions. This was his major study. He got into orgone, or orgasm energy. It just shows you how connected he was sexually, that he would name universal energy after orgasming, which couldn't be any more ridiculous. So, and of course, orgasming and all those things are very centered in the very psychotic, evil human race only. I'm sure that you are not looking at most species do not breed for fun. They breed at certain special times, mostly to carry on their race or so forth. Certainly there are some species, usually primates or animals that have very large brains, Apparently, the bigger your brain gets, the bigger your privates get, or at least the interest in your privates get. It's kind of interesting when you look at these things. So the whole idea is that dolphins have very serious sex problems, and this has been documented by anybody who's studied dolphins. That they are kind of always looking to have sex with you. And this research was done, and so, but I'm not going to get into that. But we also know the problems with primates who rape and murder. And by the way, they eat flesh. They're omnivores. They eat everything. So to think that most of your quote monkeys are vegetarians just isn't true. Chimpanzees, etc. I don't think gorillas eat meat, but it's certainly the ones related closest to man. Not only eat meat, they're also cannibals. They murder, they rape, and everything else. I mean, this is very typical, as we can see, as we get even to species that are kind of close to humans, and we are not come from apes. Mankind, I don't know if you want to, the technicality of it by scientists, whether you're a primate, a hominid, a hobbit, a goofman, a monkey freak, whatever it is that they want to state, are completely different species from what we consider chimpanzees, the apes, monkeys, etc. Just is not anywhere near similar. And we know by the finds of what we would consider Homo sapien type species. Now, Homo sapiens are the newest people that just evolved out of nowhere. But the whole idea is that this is a species that goes back millions of years. So it's nothing to do with breeding from apes. It doesn't even make any sense because apparently apes just stop evolving, right? So the whole idea is that it's just all nonsense. But what isn't nonsense? So the bottom line is that as we move into these areas of study, we have to be very careful that we follow things that are correct, etc., and we know what's going on. So, and we have to base everything in life on one thing and one thing only: results. So, now the problem is, as I've discussed many times, is that with bioentities, no matter what that may be, of course, the bioentities we're concerned with is ourselves. And what is a bioentity? Well, a bioentity means something that is in constant energetic flux. Plants are bioentity. Well, they're constantly changing. And these can be very radical. Plants change from the seasons where they drop all their leaves. And then another season they grow all the time. Some plants die and go underground to survive and then come up in the spring. So these are and they're constantly changing and going through different stages, as so-called human beings are, as we are constantly changing as bioentities. So this makes it difficult to get a precise evaluation of anything that interacts with a bioentity. But of course, we can't go by individual everything. We have to go by what works for the large group. You give 1,000 people hemlock, and probably 100% die. So it's as simple as that. It's poison. Maybe somebody doesn't, but okay, you can eat hemlock because I didn't die, but 10,000 other people died too. Buy my hemlock preparation. So this is the kind of things that we have to, of course, go by mass things, and this is what all society does. And these can be tempered, particularly when it gets into medications and other things, by the dosage of something. Less or more of something could make it better effective or stop any side effects. But there are large amounts of people that nothing happens to, and then large amounts of people that it does happen to. So the whole idea is it really depends on what it is and what the reality of that particular product is. But we have to go by, does it work? Especially if it's something that's straightforward and physical, and also if someone's making some sort of fantastic claim. Of course, one of the biggest problems is the alternative markets, and for 50 years that I've been involved in the alternative markets, basically since I was 10 years old studying first yoga and Eastern religions, and then moving into just about everything and investigating everything from typical garbage religions into all sorts of metaphysical stuff. And what are they up to? And alternative religions as well, or at least from Hare Krishnas to Mormons, etc. What are they into? So I've investigated all these things, and anything that's religious based is worthless. It doesn't matter whom it is. That includes Buddhism, Tibetanism, Dummy Lamaism, all the things out there that people love to, because, oh, it sounds pretty. Evolve yourself and grow. Give me $50, $100 and leave your wife here. So the whole idea is that all of those things is pretty much the way that life works. Now, in recent times, this started off, and of course, there's other factors involved, and there's been a movement to make sure that any type of technologies that are potent are suppressed. Just like there's never going to be free energy machines. It's never going to happen. There's never going to be alternative energy machines. We're going through a phase now that is shifting over a burden from internal combustion engines to external combustion coal burning plants to power the generators to charge the cars with. We're just switching that around. So certainly electric cars, as it appears, are less toxic, and of course, if you don't have to use oils, just think of all the motor oils that will be saved here, which are highly toxic. What do you do with that stuff? I mean, they're supposed to filter it and use it, whatever, but who knows? They're full of stuff, so you got all that stuff involved in that as well. But we do have an answer that we don't need electric cars. We could have used the same stuff we have now, the same engines and everything else, which in the long run may not be good, but certainly we could convert over tomorrow and stop the pollution of the planet by using hydrogen. 100% valid, 100% known, 100% usable right here, right now, this second. And we can make generators anywhere in the world and have them up and running. All those people that can't get water, all those people that don't have electricity to live a healthy lifestyle, well, all of that can be solved instantly. But that's a fact. Nobody cares about facts. You ignore that, saying, well, let's look over here. This is a real crappy engine. This requires fuel and other things. It's expensive. Well, let's do this. Let's put a meter on it. So the whole idea is that's exactly what we're having. So instead of developing, allowing people to develop higher and better products, and of course that scares the control corporate world, because that's what life should be all about. It should be, well, who's got the best product? And that's what we should be using. And we should be then allowing people to keep in this reality of doing things better and better, higher and higher, more and more interesting, to do better and better tasks, instead of staying with an old, worthless technology. And once we get out of that, which we never will, then society would change. And of course, that's why it doesn't happen. So if everybody was working, doing something they love to do, perfecting it, getting a particular area of interest researched into, and not worrying about, how to keep the lights on, how to keep warm and all that stuff, and using junk technologies, not having houses, not having transportation, that's right. All this stuff, if we eliminated that, people could grow into and produce things at the highest possible level. But of course, all the world is against that. But I diverged a little bit here, but let's get back into the fact that we have to prove something no matter what it is. Generally, we accept failure from everyone. Our entire system is based on supporting failure with a certain amount of provable results around. Obviously, when you turn on your light switch, your light comes on. So we have decided through toxic, primitive, expensive ways to power our electric, which runs everything we do. And people are so desperate now that everybody is reverting back to the most dangerous and most horrible technology there is, nuclear energy, because we can't keep up with the demand. The only way we can do it based on what we've allowed these people to do is through the old primitive nuclear power. Now, almost everybody in the energy industry has come out and stated that the only hope for mankind is nuclear power because we know how to use that and we can generate lots of power that way. What's the side effect, Mr. Bill? Well, if something goes wrong, we're in goo trouble. And of course, we have huge problems right now, and nobody wants to handle this. Chernobyl is leaking horrible, so are so many other of those. Basically, it's in a country of psychotic maniacs that the Ukraine is. And the whole idea is we have all these things going on. And of course, then we have other rich countries, of course, that run the nuclear power industry, like Japan, the Yakuza, otherwise known as Mafia Joe-san, who runs that industry. Nobody even wants to work there, so the Yakuza run the nuclear power plants and force people to work there. Honorable samurai way. They're such good people. So the whole idea is that these are the type of things that we run into. So, now moving over into the alternative industries, we've had this plague of evil that has swept through the industry. Thanks to Karl Hans Welz, the Satanist who pushed his form of toxic energies onto the public, and with the help of criminal money, as it's been alleged and told to me, has pushed his really bad technology out there, and basically some pretty, well, while his machines were okay built at sometimes, I mean, really they're just he puts a sticker on it where the dials are as registration points. I mean, this is really the lowest class thing you can get. Not to have a good dial that has numbers on it and things. It's just bad. It's a plastic thing, and he's got a little, I guess that's kind of, he's flipping everybody off using these little rods that stick out of machines, which is supposed to mean something there. And even to this day, and I keep running into people who are involved in this Orgone things, and I've recently got into, I've heard of him and known of him and seen his really garbage products for years, and that's Carol and Don Croft, which apparently seem to have disappeared. I guess they're, I'm not sure what's happened to them, where they have gone, what they've done. I don't know if they're both dead now because of their wonderful, helpful Orgone. Healthy, builds muscles, makes you strong. Yeah, that's why the inventor of it is dead, and his wife is dead. And a lot of people who used those products seem to be sick, ill, and to this day, these products are still being perpetrated by Satanists. That is what Karl Welz was all about. He was a Satanist. And I'm going to have links to, in another lecture, to a file where you can see all the stuff that was originally up there by Welz, and you can see his actual telephone number at that time that was linked to him in Georgia that he put on the German side. Of course, we all know that he was an Austrian, he was a German, and so forth. The bottom line is he always was kind of a Satanist fascist, which is what the Austrians are all about, and his German connections. So typical. People want to overlook all this, and the spin and whip and turn of all this stuff is the fact that there's constant Orgone crap out there now. And of course, Don Croft put out some of the garbage stuff out there. And I just listened to an interview here, and I'll try and put a link to that down here if you want to listen to this guy's rambling nonsense. Of course, what's been told to me, and of course, it's very difficult to verify anything. Is the sky blue? I don't know the sky blue. Kind of looks blue. So, we don't really know any truth to it. But, you know, he conveniently has disappeared at similar times when Karl Welz has disappeared since his death of a couple of years ago, and particularly the death of his wife even sooner than that. Don Croft has gone somewhere. All of his sites are down. You can't get his book. Now, he did write a book, and I will get... I will give a review on that when that comes. I don't know if that'll be public or not. Croft seems to have a lot of supporters. And again, he's preaching a message that everybody likes to hear. But he's connected to it completely bogus technologies, things that don't work, and made a lot of money off of other people. And it appears that he was working together with Carl Welz. And there was a fake confrontation between the two, which I don't believe at all. I think they were partners in crime. You got to remember that the entire Orgone industry, as it is known today, is ran by and perpetrated by, as is a lot of radionics, by organized crime who've taken it over and are using that to make sure that no good technology goes anywhere. And they've hired in and bought off for nickels and pennies the Satanists to do their job. After all, the number one Satanist in this country, E.A. Kennedy, openly states, and I have a copy of his videos, and we're going to put some links up to this being posted other places, where that he states that his mentor was Carl Hans Welz. He taught him everything. And the site that he has there talks about all the evil, perverted things they do, and that you have to be 18 years old to even think about joining their black magic order. So, of course, I knew this 30 years ago to some degree, and threw him out of my organization, Welz, because of his evil, destructive ways and him wanting to turn things. I mean, he's always been involved in demon. After all, he's one of these Satanists, otherwise known as an Austrian. So we ought to really know that in the core of what those people and that thought brings you. And that's the problem with anybody that does that. And it's a problem with Wilhem Reich as well, because he wasn't really an Austrian. I think he was born in, I'm not sure where he was born. Was it Hungary or somewhere, Czechoslovakia? I'm not sure ultimately, even though he lived many years in Austria. But he really wasn't an Austrian, from what I understand. Now, and again, let's clarify here. I don't know if I jumped around there or not, that Wilhem Reich was a fascinating guy, sexually obsessed, named energies after coming, and all these things that are out there is kind of fascinating. But he certainly did his research, but he was into the sexual revolution. He was teaching people to go out and be sexually free. This makes you happy. You don't get sick. Well, I think there's a lot of truth to what he said. And unfortunately, there's even a lot of truth to what Freud said, which I always used to laugh at. But the point is that we are sexually obsessed society. I mean, that's really the only thing that mankind really has, and that's sexuality. Everything else is very costly, very difficult, but basically sex, if we look at it kind of in the bigger picture, is relatively free. It is compulsively built into you, and you will not eat. You will risk your life just to have a tenth of a second orgasm feeling. And of course, this does produce all sorts of chemicals in your brain and so forth. So, I mean, he was an interesting man. And he did do a lot of research. I don't know how many people he helped or not. A lot of people claim when they went through his different therapies to release these clogged sexual energies, were benefited by it. And certainly Freud also helped in his own little way. But all of this I'm not a big fan of personally, but I certainly understand it. And anybody who doesn't admit that this world is 110% run on sexuality and what it is foolish. And one of the problems, and I think most of the violence we have in this world, is people who are sexually unhappy. And of course, your sexual centers are right next to your violent centers. So this is all part of all that. So it's a very complicated world, and I think that's something everyone has to admit. And of course, only really males are psychotically driven by this drive. There is a few caveats to that, and I'll talk about that someday as well. But the point is that people with super high sex drives generally tend to be homosexuals, including lesbians, who have huge sex drives. Interesting. Retarded people, huge sex drives. Gay men, huge sex drives. So we get into all these things, which is the fact. But or I should say, not most, but half of or what is considered the female population who isn't gay, and who knows what number that is or not, generally are sexually neutral. They don't really care unless they want to have a baby or somebody to take care of them. So it's the type of thing you run into all the time. So we need to be very cognizant. But that's for another study. But he did go out and do things with his Orgone chambers. Now, what you consider orgone, and particularly the crap produced by Carl's Welz and people like Don Croft, is not orgone in any stretch of the imagination. And then what they like to say is, well, orgone's like everything. It's really just chi and prana. It is? That's a very vast space. It's all this energy out there. It's all the stuff. It's all the same. All energy is the same. So that's like saying burning coal, gasoline, natural gas. Well, it's all the same. Well, it isn't all the same. I mean, you're kind of getting similar results. You're turning a turbine that produces electricity, but there's a big difference between burning natural gas and burning coal and burning crude oil or other ways of generating electricity. It's a big, big difference. Yeah, but they're all kind of the same. Wind energy, solar, but they're all turning into turbines. Okay. Well, no, it's not. It's completely and totally different. So we do need to understand that, and there are just slight connections. So the whole idea is that he had a very particular way of doing things, and he researched this, and he was able to prove results. Now, I recently listened to Donnie and his wifey Carol, and the kind of crap trap out of them with their drooling on their knees worshippers that say how wonderful they are with no proof of anything that they've talked about whatsoever. Now, I've heard this for a long time, and people are still selling this kind of crap out here. And Don Croft, who, as I said, basically was, as far as I allege and has been told to me, was put out there to push the orgone and to help Carl Welz. These two were good friends, and the fake little discussion they had, Don Croft, like everything he does, just rolls over. He's just trying to get people to buy his garbage with his goofball wife, the great psychic. She sees stuff. She does. Well, I've known many, many psychics, and at different levels, and it's interesting, and some of them are very good in certain areas, but they're all very delusional, and you get an awful lot of bad information from them because none of them have honed or trained their skills. And her complete story of how she was psychic, and of course there's Indians in her family. Ooh, yeah, we all know the highly advanced North American Indians, known for their raping and torture, just like your neighbor. So the whole idea is that, of course, there's good and bad of everything, but we got to be very careful to give people a label because they are primitives, that they're better than you. Well, I don't think so. I don't think anybody's better than anybody. And the bottom line is that everybody has their contribution. We have to be very careful of giving any culture like the dummy llama and what have they ever done? So the whole idea is that I'd like to know a single person who can tell me what the Tibetan society has done for that. They were conquered by everybody. Of course, people like to criticize the Chinese, but the Brits are in there. They're boy the queen, let's go kill some of them Tibetan boys. So the whole idea is that all this was in there and so forth. So, but the whole idea is there's not much that they have done. And if you want to call them, they have their right to be their spiritual level of what. But basically, they're a religious-run country. And now, what they have done in thousands of years, a mystery to me, kind of like, what did the Queen do in 80 years? She liked horses. Oh, how nice. So the whole idea is that, what are all those things out there mean? So we get back to all these things. Now, Wilhem Reich did research. He opened up an institute. He did all sorts of research. He came up with methods. I mean, this is a guy who's well studied, put together whole lines of teaching and everything else. We just don't know from the literature whether his actual technology worked to heal people, particularly of cancer. Of course, when you get into these areas, you're going against the establishment. You can't heal people. This is against the law, period. You have to be healed by the tribal head muckamuck and medicine man, goofball guy, rattler, shaker. You have to be higher. You have to be healed by them because that's how society works. So again, you put in laws and policies to help people that really just turn into what? Corruption, and then a certain group of people own and run everything. And this is really sad. So, this is the problem with everything in life. So, he did all this stuff. He had clinics and everything else. So I don't know what we can't believe positive or negative because both sides of these things come out and give you bad information. You've got people who want anything that works suppressed, and we have those who are trying to get what they feel is right and works well out to the public. That is dubious as well. So we just don't know. And as long as things are kept illegal, as long as things are kept hush-hush and people are persecuted, we have all sorts of problems. So there has to be some way of working this out. And I think there can be doing things. And I'm not sure that any alternative treatment should necessarily be outlawed, but you should be warned and counseled that, here's the statistics involved in this. These people didn't make it. These people are telling you, but a lot of people will believe complete nonsense. And it's just shocking the kind of information I just heard from Don and Carol Croft, who have a tongue-wagging following out there if you read there. And so far, I'll be interested in what they say in the books. And of course, he's got that typical anti-government, anti-government, the typical alternative stuff. And of course, he's figured out how to do it. But you listen to him, he's quite ignorant. He really hasn't done much of anything, and he's making outrageous claims of stopping all sorts of weather control devices and everything else by sprinkling plastic balls full of metal shavings around the planet, which are making major changes. He's curing people of all sorts of diseases with his zapper with metal shavings in plastic. So, all of this is just such ridiculousness that it isn't even funny. Apparently, it didn't work with him, who apparently is, I don't know if he's dead now or what, but certainly he has disappeared. And of course, his mentor, his buddy, his pal that he worked with, Karl-Heinz Welz, certainly died young, and so did his wife. Well, there wasn't any Orgone curing going on there. So the whole idea is that these things are part and parcel of disinformation and lies, and people are just getting on their knees and licking their feet saying how great this little ball, it stopped a cell phone tower. Well, I got this quarter-size ball with ground up. His wife was even using aluminum, and of course, which is in general, once it's processed, is fairly toxic, even though it's a conductor. Wilhem Reich stated not to use things like copper and other things, but people, of course, state that do that anyway. So why go with the guy who seems to know what's going on? It's just astonishing. But as I said, I jumped away from that. Wilhem Reich apparently made cloudbusters, did get it to rain in places like Arizona when he brought his machines there, and so forth. So he was able to make it rain. And this is, of course, something that's plaguing the world today and will continue to do, and it's being completely ignored. It certainly seems to me to be very silly with something that has shown to it and to have been effective. But we just don't know over and over again. Other people, was it Trevor Constable? He did some rainmaking stuff and apparently was able to get results. All of these things we just don't know. So what the effects are, we get some reports and it kind of dies, and I just don't understand why. But there also is very much of a clear science to it. This Wilhem Reich never ever took metal shavings and put them someplace to create his Orgone accumulators. Now his accumulators, and they were not made from, as I was mistakenly stated in the past, steel wool and wool from goats. If goats are that big at creating great energies, well, we should all have many of them in our houses. Maybe we should move out to fields where there's wool there, where we have sheep, so that we can hang around them and apparently bring all that great energy in there. People have used steel wool and they've used wood. What? This is nothing that Wilhem Reich ever did. And he made multi layers. You're talking about hundreds of layers. Now, his material that he used with the steel wool was a combination of a special type of what apparently was a mineral-rich mixture. A mineral-rich mixture that he then put in his panel. So it's very specific of what it is. Can't remember what it is today, but and it's really unimportant to do that. But there is, we have to understand that and what it is and so forth. And what are you accumulating? Well, the point is, in this day and age, you're accumulating energies from your environment around you, which is just totally and completely toxic, as was done by Galen Hieronymus, who used accumulators, cosmic pipes is what he called them. And the point is that when you start drawing in atmospheric condensing of these energies, which have nothing to do with chi and prana or anything else, you're dealing with a primitive energy. It's almost a pseudo-electrical energy. When you start sucking these energies in this crude manner, you suck in all the toxins. And this was a problem even in the 60s and 70s, not to mention now where we have hundreds of nuclear power plants all over this world. So it's pretty sad. So he did prove things. He has a lot of research. He had an institute, etc., where he did studies. And, of course, he did get in trouble and was arrested. First he was fined. Apparently he was jailed after breaking a court order. And there's some controversy there as well. Apparently some employee broke the order by shipping machines out of state, crossing federal borders, of course, the same old nonsense. And he was then arrested for that and apparently died in prison. Now, we don't know if he was poisoned, killed, etc. We just don't know. Everybody likes to say that. They used to say that about Ruth Drown, and she was in prison for a short period of time, but once she was released, she lived to be in her early 70s. So these things aren't as clear as people think they are. So as we get back to the understanding of what's going on, and basically the corruption and that was involved with Croft and Welz, we run into something that was perpetrated on the general public, as so many things are. And you get all the same boobs out there, his holy hand grenades. And to think that a little ball with some metal shavings in it and a crystal and some wire is going to disrupt extraterrestrials is the epitome of stupidity. And these are all con games for people to be wasting their time building cheap stuff that was claiming to be effective. Now, that's the key to life. Everything in life is that if you can build something really cheap that can do something of great value, well, everybody can then do it, right? You know, that's what, of course, Orgone products are today. They're just goop. They pour them into resins and other things, which I'm not sure if resins are natural or not. Most of these tend to be plasticky based. And the fact is, they're just plastic coated stuff. So, and of course, anytime Carol Croft was brought up the fact that what you're using are not really good products, she made one excuse after another that they really are. And the mouthpiece of a husband of hers chimed in as well. And this guy knows absolutely nothing. And really put together a whole bunch of crap. You know, as he said, his Orgone zapper is the biggest joke out there. Those zappers, particularly the ones that he made, which I do have one, don't work. They never have, and they're putting out a particular frequency, and they don't work. I mean, they tend to burn your skin, and of course you think it's working because something is happening there, but the effects of that is nothing. They don't work on anything. And certainly didn't work on him, who's probably died from some sort of illness. And of course, it certainly didn't work for the inventor of Orgone, as I've mentioned already, who died young, and his wife died young, and many of his family have. So all of the things that go with that don't make any sense. So the whole idea is to think you're going to stop an alien with a bunch of that kind of energy. And he has the nerve to think that he scattered this kind of orgone material in places where he made it rain all the time. Of course, completely nonsense with unverified. He also was able to take out the weather control systems by the Air Force and other things. Thank you, double agent Dun Croft. He's out there taking care of the world with his scraps of metal and plastic balls. So he's like a master spy. So this is the kind of nonsense with his goofball psychic wife. So the whole idea is that this is just complete nonsense, and they're also stating, and you can get people to, and you know, it's amazing because when you find people like this who are set-ups by the government, and you read like reviews. Last night I just read reviews on his books. I'm not sure where that was. I've ordered his book, which is difficult to get now and apparently very expensive. I was able to find an inexpensive one, and all of those all-access Patreon members will be able to access this book in the library that they have access to. So they all have, you know, these 4-star reviews. Everybody has 4-star, what is it, 4 or 5? Who knows? Hey, wonderful. The man's the best thing on the planet. Everything he does works. If Jesus knew him, he would be alive today. Sad Jesus didn't know him. So, you know, these are the kind of nonsense you run into. And, you know, you really have to be suspicious over something that is such moronically simple. And, of course, again, he's claiming to take out all these cell phone towers. Now, cell phone towers are able to emit all sorts of things. And I'm sure they're not up to any good, period. We all know that. I don't think there's any problem with that, but he's stating that Orgone cured everything. They're curing everything in Africa. They're curing everything everywhere. Of course, we've seen in the latest pandemic where Africa has had problems that all this Orgone stuff, which is made in Africa, and of course, you know, it's made, you know, it sounds terrible, but let's face it, Africa's a very poor place, and they're able to get scraps of metal and plastic, and the African Orgone people make outrageous claims, and with no kind of credibility or validation, that it's doing it. Certainly, they would. Where are they with all the latest different problems that are over there? Well, they're nowhere, and they're not making any effects, period. But when we look at all this stuff, it's the same old kind of goofball, imbecilic claims that nobody seems to be able to verify. So you get one of these little balls, you throw it near or place it next to a cell phone tower, and that knocks the tower out. Well, what does that mean? He knocks the tower out. So, cell phone towers probably cost a lot of money, hundreds of thousands, maybe possibly even millions. You know that it costs, I was surprised what it cost to have a traffic light operating in it. And one traffic light is like $50,000, $60,000 a year to keep running by a city. One light. Or was it more than that? $150,000, $200,000. Why? I don't quite understand. I thought they were kind of automatic, but that's the kind of cost you get. But the whole idea is a cell phone tower that costs a lot of money to put it there. You've got to power it. It's got electricity going there. You got to make it look like a fake tree. And all the things that go with that are not cheap. And a lot of people depend on those things. Okay? All of our cell phones work on what? Cell phone towers. So it's like everything in life, it has its pros and cons. And I'm not a big fan of it. I'm not sure we even need cell phones, but that's a whole nother subject. I was happy with something connected to the wall. But whatever. My only problem with phones was the fact of how costly they were. And of course, people made billions from the cell phone con that came out initially. So as we're doing with all these things, we have to keep in mind of where that. So the whole idea is they were knocking out all these cell phone towers. I'm not sure what knocking out means. They certainly were functional, because if you're going to knock down a whole bunch of cell phone towers, you're going to get yourself into a lot of trouble, ultimately. Secondly, people aren't just going to let that be knocked down. So the point is, you're going to go there and do what? So this is all fantasy, and I hear this all the time. The problem is, you got the people in charge who are either directly or indirectly lying to you about everything. Then you have the fantasists. They somehow think they are the Orgone Batman, and they're out there saving the world with little bits of choppy metal and a little wire and a crystal. What? Okay, this is just nonsense. So, the whole idea is there's nothing to that. Now, you got to remember that Wilhem Reich actually put together many layers of things. He had very specific ways of doing things, and these were made well. They weren't what we have today whatsoever. And I'm not sure his stuff worked all that well or not. He had all sorts of problems. There are all sorts of other situations involved. But the bottom line is that the fact that you can knock out, and of course, again, he is using what he considers cloud busting technologies as well, which are copper pipes, which again, Wilhem Reich said not to use, placed on top of, put in the ground, then placed up there, and this clears things out. So, this gets rid of chemtrails, well, I don't believe that at all. I've never seen that actually happen either. I mean, this is all gossip by people, and they're claiming they're getting these effects from something that is this simple. When you have that kind of energy happening all the time, if you're talking about metal shavings, you're talking about all these type of things, well, there's composites of this everywhere. So I don't really understand what all that means, but there's no proof of any of this ever working. So the whole idea is that to say that you've taken a cell phone tower out, taken it out to do what? So it's just a bunch of nonsense with no proof whatsoever. And of course, you're going to get the same stoogey idiots. I got myself an orgo and I was dying of cancer now. Well, I don't believe that for a second. I'd have to see a lot of proof of what happened there as well. So the whole idea is that I don't believe it. I've heard all sorts of stories about all sorts of things. And while some of these strange and unbelievable stories may be true, most things are not true, and they're not working that well. So we have to be careful. And again, these are bioentities. And as bioentities, things are changing all the time. So the results one person gets is not something else. But if you use, now a cell phone tower is not a bioentity. So if you're using a technology to do what to that tower, I don't know what they mean by knocking it out. They don't work. So all these cell phone towers that are out there powering everybody's cell phones in the cities and everything else, or everywhere for that matter, was knocked out by that. And how is that being proof of that? And as I said, you're going to get hundreds of comments that say how wonderful this stuff is and it works. Well, yeah, because this is a big marketing scheme, and these people involved in all this stuff are directly connected to organized crime, as is the radionic industry, as was Karl-Heinz Welz and everybody else. These people were directly connected to criminal elements, to satanic groups, and this is proven, plain and simple, at least his satanic connection. It's hard to prove. It certainly has been alleged by a lot of people, and certainly don't have to go too deep in it. And you have the head Satanist in the United States stating that he was trained by Karl-Heinz Welz. His information was online and still is online. And this is a guy who was involved in all that. This is a guy also who has many connections to a bunch of now dead people, including himself, that used his technology. So this is all pretty shocking if you look at the reality of it all. So he's coming out making all these ridiculous comic book statements. You can see that he doesn't really know much at all. The bottom line is that he doesn't have a lot of information on much of anything. His all of a sudden disappearance is quite suspicious after the death of his mentor. So all of this adds up, but people are still believing this, and there are many people out there that are following this bogus, toxic belief system and energies out there developed by this hardcore Satanist who is involved in criminal activities of all types and manners. You got to remember, these Satanists are not just bad guys. They're involved in the massive international rings of pedophilia. They're involved in people smuggling, drugs, and everything else. That's what these people do, and it is not a joke. So the whole idea is that that's how the whole satanic movement is all about. So we do have to keep that in mind with the bigger picture out there. So the whole idea is him to come out and make the statements he did. And of course, he's saying he's going all over the place, and he's making it rain, and he's knocking out towers, and he knocked out the Air Force's ability just by sprinkling shreds of, I don't know if they're aluminum. You know, again, always the details are kind of sketchy. Aluminum filings, shavings, maybe they're stainless steel, whatever that is. There is aluminum in stainless steel, by the way. It's mostly nickel, but there's aluminum as well. So all of that's part of this stuff. And everything is getting all these things. And, of course, he certainly was around long enough with his little buddy, and really nothing changed whatsoever. Certainly hasn't been changes on one level at all, except for the fact that these people were making more and more money and taking over industries to sell garbage. And Don had absolutely no problem bending over to whatever. And, of course, he was using conveniently, and this is what the fake controversy came about, that regardless of what anybody's opinion of Welz was, is that he owned the trademark of Orgonite. That's not a real term. That's an invented term, and he invented it, and he patented it. He trademarked it. And then here he come old Donnie with his psychotic little wife, comes around and takes that term and starts using that, which is a misnomer as well. But he bought in hook, line, and sinker and gives all the credit to Welz. Now, gave all the credit, hook, line, no. They were working together. And it's pretty obvious, and probably were in the, and of course nobody really knows, it's hard to prove anything, but most likely they were bosom buddies of Satan together, and were working with that in this whole fake contrived thing, and the garbage they were selling, and going around the country and writing these crap books and everything else. I mean, their organization, and they were selling little wires twisted in different ways. I mean, the most garbage stuff you could possibly get, and of course everything was based just on metal shavings and plastic resin that, of course, empowered everything to stop cell phone towers, jump over tall buildings, become the Superman, unless you get old and die, Carl. Yeah. So the whole idea is that all these things are the reality there that everyone has to look at. And it's very important for people to know that and know and understand the fact that this is the reality of what is going on there. So this guy perpetrated this fraud, and he was kind of the front man. You could say he was the brown shirts of the satanic Nazi movement, pretty much, that Welz was involved in. And you got to remember, this is not about the fakeness that Nazism wants to tell you today, that this is some sort of white power thing, and it's about racial. It has nothing to do with it. It's about power of the criminal element, which, of course, what Nazism always was about. And so the whole idea is that they perpetrated this nonsense, and people want to buy into it, and they go on talk shows like this show, and people sit there and give them the biggest crap. I've seen the same thing done with other people with their garbage technology that doesn't work. Technology that I personally tested and had 6 other people test that I had no involvement with. They were just, look, they had a particular need. They went to this guy. He failed. I tested it personally myself. I tested with people I knew as well. None of his crap worked. Now, I didn't do that with Donnie here, but, it's pretty, you got to be a special type of stupid to believe the modern Orgone nonsense. Now, if you want to get back into Wilhem Reich stuff and you want to go through his stuff and you want to use the layers and understand what it is, well, the point is yeah, that's something to look into. And there certainly seems to be something there. I'd love to see somebody come up with some cloud busting technologies to actually create rain and so forth. We have a planet that's going to need this, and this seems to be a mystery to modern goofball science. So the whole idea would be wonderful. But, he did serious work and was a seriously educated man, a seriously dedicated to research, and everything that went with that. So the whole idea is that that was part of this reality. So how valid it is, what it can be done, how many people were actually cured, well, I don't really know, and I'm not sure we're ever going to know. I don't think we can believe his records, and I don't think we can believe the opposition's accusations that his stuff didn't work. I don't think we can believe any of them. I always tend to believe that the truth is somewhere in between that, because everybody's got a prejudiced point of view. But the bottom line is that these people are just spreading garbage, and there's many people still making this crap and putting it out there, and they're kind of attractive little things. I'm going to be showing a couple of videos of this kind of contrived energy forms, and they're pretty. They produce little to no energy. It's just as simple as that. And as I said, I will be showing some of these devices, which I bought mostly for their attractiveness. They're nice decorative items, but they don't do anything. So the whole idea, if you're going to make claims like this, which are extreme, well, you better be able to back it up. Plain and simple. And both of these people, the modern guy who I tested, makes outrageous claims, and nothing works. What is Don Croft talking about? What did he get results from? And what does his goofball idiots that believe him claim to get results with? Well, I'll tell you right now, these are paid people, part of the huge amount of the population who are bought off whores working for criminals. I mean, there's just a huge amount of these people, and they're more than happy to do it. People can't make enough money. People are blackmailed. They're threatened. And, of course, they find lots of little nobodies like Donnie and Marie here who have no money, no life, or anything else, and have gone out there and been given a job. And not only given a job, just like people like Terence McKenna, whose books are made successful and who are given big paying speaking jobs, because that's part of what you get when you join the criminal elements out there that are involved in this. We all know that Terence McKenna was a CIA agent and that he was backed by them. Who else would? McKenna was the biggest nobody on the planet, never got anything, typical of the drug movement, but he worked well with the CIA and produced lots of toxic, horrible stuff to torture other people, while he said that you should be different from it all. But of course, he spoke out of both sides of his mouth, but he openly admitted that he was part of this and that he was a criminal that was blackmailed, and that then he worked for the CIA after that. Well, and people want to, he was only kidding. You kidding when you call yourself a criminal and a whore for the CIA when you talk about how bad Govey is? The establishment, dude. These kind of hippie creeps really make me vomit and projectile poo at the same time. So the whole idea is that we need to understand that. So this fraud continues. Orgone, as perpetrated in modern technology, is all crap. It doesn't work. It is bad for you. It is toxic. Plain and simple. People need to get over that. Now, if somebody wants to use more traditional methods or has figured out some way to make something other than a little poopy powder stuck in resin, then let's see. And let's see the results from it. Reich had all sorts of research he did. He built boxes people would sit in. All of this stuff, and we don't know what kind of results. I tend to think that if people were getting healed as much, that he would not be as persecuted as he was. There seems to be this great question mark with any alternative healers who are highly persecuted. Yet there are many people that come out and say, yeah, this worked for me. And there's many people that come out and say it doesn't. So here we go. But that's part of the disinformation campaign, is to confuse you. And then, of course, the people in power take over saying, well, we know better. We do. Well, we've seen the results of the people in power. Their graveyards are full of them. So we just don't know. Now, I think research ought to be done, particularly into the potential cloud busting and etc. that can be used with Reich's technology. I'm not sure that accumulation, based on the facts that we know, has any value whatsoever because the atmosphere is just too toxic. Any Orgone researcher will tell you that. But there are certain interesting aspects here. And I don't believe it's everything. I don't believe this is chi, prana, and everything else. I think we're mixing apples and oranges. I think what we've done is put a lot of spices into a dish, and we've ruined it. And we have to be careful to stop that. So we have to find truth. Truth has to be demonstrated in facts, especially if you have a fact. Me make a goofy ball and stop a cell phone tower. Oh, great. Let's see it. Let's prove it. This isn't bio. Bio is always an out. And I just don't know how my products work on people because they are, well, everybody kind of gets positive results from them. The bottom line is that you're bio entity. Some people, wow, I had this happen. I made all this money. I've done it. Other people say, yeah, I got some results. But, it's not, I didn't turn into Tom Cruise. So the whole idea is that, so it's hard really to say with these things. And anytime something is bio-based, you get a problem with research. But there still should be enough positive information from biotools to prove whether it works or not. But I don't like testing biotools only. Let's test how these things knock out cell phone towers. Let's figure out how that works. So let's see how that's done. And what does that even mean? So they dropped one of these little balls, and of course one person said on a comment that it's amazing how you can take out a cell phone tower with a $2 ball of goo that you place near them. So you're destroying the entire cell phone tower networks, and of course you get away with it, and you're able to do that with something that you just drop near it. I doubt that cell phone tower that this was dropped next to has stopped functioning whatsoever. So I don't know what type of functioning again, but the devil's in the details, and you can make statements like that. And what does that mean? And what is the proof of this? They have no proof. It doesn't work. Orgone, plain and simple, and that's modern rebirth, is a con artist game developed by a hardcore Satanist who admits to be that, who is the mentor of the biggest Satanist on the planet. Another connection to this bigger field of Satanists that are went out there who've empowered different people. And I believe personally, and what has been told to me, again, how can we prove all this? That Don Croft is one of the agents of this Satanist group, and don't believe his stuff, because what he's telling you to do is to keep busy while, instead of picking up a bucket full of water and throwing it on the fire, he's telling you, just stand over here and the fire will go out by itself. So this kind of disruptive con game done by these people, particularly the lowest mentality. You want to find stupid people, well, you'll find them in the Orgone industry. It's all about goops of junk that you put together for pennies and make lots of rip-off money from that do absolutely nothing. Orgone is a fraud. It is a complete and total lie, and it's really hurting the original research done by Wilhem Reich to really come to something. And somebody should be researching those things to find out, well, what can we do with that? How can we cloud bust? How can we generate water? How can we do these things? How can we make things that really have bioactive effects? So they've basically taken something that at least is very interesting and has kept going even many, many years after his death, to a point that has destroyed it by producing things that can't even be called useful at any level. At the very most, they're cute little decorations. And if you think there's anything more than that, well, you're one of the dumb, manipulated stooges out there, and you're part of the problem. Until next time.